Boom. All right, everybody, welcome back to Crossfire with SP and Gabi. We have a special guest with us today, but before we get to that, quickly, you guys, if you haven't hit subscribe, please do that down at the bottom of your screen. Check out our merch on the Cafe Press site. And we've got some quick sponsors to acknowledge. Smirnoff Ice, as usual. Arm Assassin Strength Shop, armassassin.com. And if you're not aware, they are the sponsor for the $50 gift card that we're giving away this month, which will be drawn from our Patreon members. So if you haven't done so, get on that Patreon site and get in a tier 1 even, and you will get entered for that contest. And of course, Garage Door Guys in KC, Brian Kerner. And our Patreon members, we have Brandon Irwin, Jorn Harold Habu, Bernie Marcochia, Zane William Nisley, and Jordan Yoakum. So without any further delay, our guest today is Mr. Eric Roussin. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Brian. Happy to be here.
Right on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So for those of people that maybe aren't familiar with yourself and not necessarily aware of your involvement or whatever, can you give us a little bit of brief background on yourself, what you have done in the sport, what you have, you start, and I'll jump in there with any clarification questions as we move forward.
Sure. So I got into sport right around the same time as you. I started training, practicing with Rick Blanchard's team in Ottawa in September 96, first tournament, January 97. So competing, 23 years. I've won nationals, one open national titles. I got 2 masters last year. Won provincials, I think 14 times. Best finishes I made it to the finals of the WAL championships every year from 2014 to 2017. My best finish, I think I got 8th left hand in 2015, 7th in 2016. That's in the left 195s. And I also won one of the WAL, the Southern Regionals in New Orleans in 2017. So those are sort of some of my highlights in arm wrestling.
Awesome. And you are also very accomplished in another sport.
Right. So around 9 or 10 years ago, I got into grip sport. So that's I like to describe it as a strongman for the hands. So all the events test some aspect of hand strength, be it crush strength, pinch strength, open hand strength, wrist strength. I've done very well in that. That's an even smaller sport than arm wrestling, but it is growing. So I started the sport in Canada, but now we have promoters in, I think, 5 different provinces. I've won nationals 5 times, won North Americans twice. I have gold medals at the World Championships. So that I'm also having a lot of fun doing, and it goes very well with arm wrestling.
So if you were to pick one that was like your primary focus at the moment, could you pick one first of all, and which one?
Primary focus at the moment in the past couple of years has been in grip. Now, I guess it goes with what you're having the most success in, and I'm doing very, very well in that. So I'm riding the wave of that and enjoying going all over really the world for those competitions. I was really excited when the WAL had the big tournaments, just the double elimination tournaments. But now that the focus is on super matches, less people are involved, and I've lost a bit of interest in competing. I am going to nationals, provincials and nationals every year. But I'm only competing maybe 3 or 4 tournaments in arm wrestling per year, whereas in grip, I'm probably doing 6 or 7.
Right.
Yeah.
Take it away, Mr. Gabi. What do you got?
I wanted to ask you the appeal of, I find arm wrestling compared to grip sports. Arm wrestling, you have the ability to win when you're basically beating another human being, which I find there's an added incentive to that. I never saw the allure in lifting something heavier than your opponent, as it's really a battle within yourself more than it is versus somebody else. So maybe you can explain to me the advantage or the pros of, or what attracts you to grip sport, or is pulling you away from arm wrestling towards grip sport.
Right. So nothing beats winning an arm wrestling match. The feeling you get from winning an arm wrestling match is there's something about it. It's more exciting. It's a lot more stressful. So going to an arm wrestling tournament is just it's not the same thing. Like you said, you're not competing against someone else directly in strongman or grip sport. But my favorite, I've always been, the strength side of arm wrestling is what appeals to me more than the technical and the speed. I always like the strength aspect. That's what drew me to arm wrestling to begin with. And that's what I like about, grip sport or strongman. It's really strength based. Yes, there is some technique to the lifts, but basically you are rewarded for how much work you put in. And, there's nothing's dependent on ref calls or you missing the start or anything like that. So if you are strong, and it's a lot more predictable, for that reason it's less stressful. I know what I should be able to lift come game day in a grip sport contest. I don't have to worry about that many variables in terms of who my opponents are or what techniques they'll use, whether they'll go fast, whether they'll top roll or hook or all that. So the feeling you get from winning an arm wrestling match, I think that's really high up there in terms of probably better than the feeling you get, I guess, from lifting something heavy. But I like the fact that it's very predictable in terms of grip sport. I don't have to worry about what could go wrong. I know what I should be able to lift. If I've done my training, if I've done my diet, everything leads up to the contest. There's very few surprises, and I like that.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense actually. Now, last time I checked with you, your kids were, I believe you have 3 boys or 4?
3 boys and 1 girl.
Okay, now they were totally kicking ass in arm wrestling. Have they slowly transitioned to grip, or are they still totally immersed in arm wrestling?
So they're not yet at the age where they're training for anything. I mean, sometimes they'll come downstairs and, do a little bit of training, but they're definitely not taking those sports seriously right now. So whenever there's a kids contest, which is basically every tournament I run or Rick Blanchard runs or Joe Gould runs or Devin runs, there's a lot of kids arm wrestling in the Ottawa area. So if we're around and they don't have, a hockey tournament or something else, we're going to be there. So they like competing in that. And in recent years, I've been hosting small grip contests for kids, and that's usually here where I live. So they're going to compete in that. They have not traveled yet for grip, but
now I'm technically not a child, but I have a child's hands. Do I qualify for the child's competition?
No, it's more of an age thing. Yeah.
Damn.
Those are pretty tiny little hands.
They are, man. I was going at it with RVJ the other day, and he says, "The fuck do you know about arm wrestling?" I said, "Well, I'm not the best, but I can tell you that I've been top rolled less than 5 times in my weight class in 15 years. So there is something about that when you have a very short forearm and a small hand. It plays to the training and the approach to it. But anyway, yeah. But I don't know if it was Eric. Someone had a grip competition in Ottawa in 2007 or 8, and there was a grip competition to a prelude to an arm wrestling competition, and there was a Rolling Thunder competition, and I did that because I didn't have to. I could put my thumb under. I didn't have to fully, because it was I think it was a 2.5-inch handle or whatever, and I did pretty good. But man, when it comes to pinching stuff, I'm terrible at plate pinches. I don't have long fingers. I'm terrible at. So you don't have a very thick hand, Eric, but you have a very long hand.
Yeah, so that's why I'm good. I have a good hand for the thick handle stuff. The Rolling Thunder, that's my specialty. Anything that's a big bar, because I have a relatively long hand. It's not a giant hand, but it is a thin hand, so I get a really good wrap.
Right.
So on those events, I do very, very well. Yeah. That contest you're talking about, that was the very, very first grip contest I ran, and that was before the Ottawa Arm Wrestling Championships in just early 2007.
Good memory. Yeah. And I remember, was Jed Johnson there? Did he win that? Was he there?
Jed was not there. There was a strong man. There was a young strong guy who weighed probably about 350 pounds, and he won the heavyweight contest, having never done grip stuff, but he was just, he was a strongman competitor.
Yeah.
I think his name was Yves Ferrier. I didn't know him at the time, but he showed up for that.
Yeah, I do recall getting close to my body weight with the Rolling Thunder, lifting it with my left, which was pretty
good.
Like 75 pounds?
No, at the time I was 154, and I think I did 145. It was close to my weight, but I was.
If you got 145 with your hand, that's an amazing lift.
Yeah. Well, it's not my hand. I just have an incredibly strong forearm and wrist, and my fingers, although they're short, they don't buckle. So although he has a small hand, man, it's a tightly constructed hand that doesn't let loose. So I'm okay with the Rolling Thunder. Rolling Thunder, I seem to do a lot better with than the pinch stuff. I guess I don't know why. But because arm wrestling is really stopping someone from rolling out of your hands, so there is a lot of crossover to the Rolling Thunder. but I don't. When your fingers are fully extended and you're pinching something, I don't find that carries over to arm wrestling as much as the rolling thunder. It does. It does a bit, of course. All the grip stuff carries over, but not to the same degree.
No, I completely agree. You don't need much pinching. You definitely don't need much crush in arm wrestling.
No.
Yeah.
So we have a question in the comment section, Eric. Aaron Toth says, "Hey guys, what's Eric's max weights on his equipment? I mean, for example, how much can he squeeze? How much kilogram can he lift with a monster crush, etc.?"
Okay, so I can give a few numbers.
Sure.
Rolling Thunder, I have the overall Canadian record. I've lifted 110 kilos on 3 occasions in 3 contests, so that's 242.5 pounds. I haven't done much with the monster crush, but on the country crush, the 2-inch country crush, where it's just the standard deadlift with 2 hands, I had the record for 198 pound, the 90 kilo class, and in a contest, the first time I tried it, I lifted 395. That was recently surpassed by Devin Lee Brown. I don't know if you know that guy. He's a puller out of Minnesota, an arm wrestler and a good grip guy. So 395 on that. In terms of crushing, that's my relative weakness. I'm still strong, but it's my relative weakness of the grip implements. So I can close sort of a hard iron mine number 3, but from a set position. So in grip sport, you're allowed to set it. And essentially, you can use both hands to close it to within 20 millimeters. And then you just have to do the last part. So in that with that technique, I can close sort of a hard number 3. I'm somewhere between a number 3 and a number 3.5. But I definitely cannot just pick up a 3 and close it. That's I'm still quite a ways from that.
I actually trained for that for a while from the credit card set is what it was called. And I managed to get the number 3 closed.
Oh, nice.
You
haven't bothered getting certification?
No, I never actually went through the process of doing it. And there was actually there was no 3.5 at the time. There was only a 4.
Right.
And the gap between a 3 and the 4 is substantial. Like, I don't even think I could close the 4 with both hands.
No one is yet certified on the number 4 since they started the credit card requirement.
Right. And at the time, I think only about 5 guys on the planet had closed it from a set grip.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the credit card requirement? I don't know.
So you just have to start with your gripper. You can close the gripper with 2 hands, but then you have to open up your hands wide enough that you can slip a credit card through. It's sort of, I don't know what it is, almost 3 inches. Just to show that you're at least getting that type of width and closing it with 1 hand. Because what they used to do initially, before they had any rules, people were taking 2 hands, closing the gripper completely, taking their other hand off and holding it for a fraction of a second. So they said that's getting ridiculous. And then they said, well, maybe no setting, in other words, not using the other hand at all. It was much harder. So I guess that was sort of the compromise that Iron Mind came up with.
Nice.
Excellent. I'm getting asked a question about, and I'll answer it very quickly. Chris versus SB at the Vern Martel Classic. No, he declined.
Kodiak, it's Beauchemin, right? That dude?
Yeah, that guy, they were trying to set that match up, and I actually had been contacted by some of the guys out there again, and I said I would consider it, and then his coach said no. He's training for nationals. So, speaking of nationals, Eric, you're coming to Winnipeg?
I am. I'm bringing my 3 boys too. Yeah, I really had fun at last year's. It was such a big kids tournament. The kids tournament, when you have kids, it's fun to watch the kids tournament. And last year's event was huge. I couldn't believe the number of kids. And I expect, from what I hear, it might even be bigger in 2020. So it should be a lot of fun.
Well, it absolutely should be. And I had a lot of fun basically now because of course, I have a daughter that competes, and she's planning on actually competing at this year's nationals as well. And yeah, it should be good. This year, provincials in Manitoba is actually being held on 2 separate weekends because we have so many kids that they're getting their own event.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably better for everyone, actually.
Well, it is. I mean, there's so many kids that they almost outnumber the adults now.
Future's bright. Future's bright.
Yeah. So you also, before I get to that, you have, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were one of the founding members of the Ottawa High Hookers? one of the original members?
Yeah. So when I joined the sport, it was Rick Blanchard running a club called the Regional Arm Wrestling Club that he started in mid '80s, and that's Nancy Locke came out of there. A lot of pullers from that time. Luc Faubert, they had a lot of pullers. Steve Morneau. When I joined Rick in '96, the club was sort of dying down, not as going as strong, and it sort of fizzled out by the end of the '90s. But when Devin moved to Ottawa around 2000, and then we started up training together. So yeah, me, Devin, Yvan Clement, I think we were the first three. We only came up with the name maybe 4 or 5 years later. But yeah, it grew. So and now it's crazy. I don't actually practice very often. Table time, I basically make more social calls to Devin's place every couple of months. But some of those practices are very, very big. There's a lot of arm wrestling going on in the Ottawa area right now.
Are they almost too big sometimes? Like Devin spoke a little bit about this and having volume of guys there, but
yeah, it got to the point. At least his practices, he had to sort of go underground and not publicize them as much because it was getting very, very big. But even now, there's still typically 15, 20 guys. Steve Morneau at his gym, which is just across the river in Hull, Gatineau, he also. I went to a practice in November. There was probably 40 people there. It's big.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ottawa's a hub. That's why we'll get into it later, and we'll plug the hell out of your annual tournament. But Ottawa's a huge hub. Belleville's within driving distance. Toronto's within driving distance. Luckily for me in Montreal, when I've been in Montreal, 2 hours down the road, I'm almost surprised that some of the events haven't been bigger. But Ottawa has a history of having successful tournaments in the past, for sure. I mean, you can go back to 2006, 2007 when you had Eastern Ontario Circuit. Remember that?
Yep.
That was fun.
So right around that time, Ryan, you might not be aware of this, but in Ontario, 2005, 2006 were sort of down years. There just weren't many tournaments period happening. So in 2006, I decided, I'm going to go grassroots. I'm going to start this Eastern Ontario Circuit. I think I held 12 tournaments in different towns, all within about an hour of Ottawa. And they were all qualifiers for the end of year finale. If you finished top 3 in your class at one of the regionals, you could qualify for the finals, which was a big triple elimination tournament with huge trophies. And it brought a lot of people into the sport that year. So I really had fun doing it. Following year, I started having kids, so that was sort of the end of that league. But it was nice in that 1 year.
Oh, I loved that. I think I picked up about 30 trophies that year. I mean, everything was in. Ottawa. A lot of your events were towards Montreal. Well, half of them, right? So
right.
Cornwall, stuff like that. Hawkesbury.
Yep.
Right down the road from me. We were bringing a good contingency from Quebec, right? NG, Sylvain.
Yeah.
We had some good guys coming from Quebec. Why not? Ottawa's offered us more events than Quebec has since I've been in the sport. So that's a huge bonus for us being bordering Ottawa.
Yeah. No, between Toronto and Montreal, we're so with the tournaments in Canada plus the ones in the northeastern states, this is a great place if you want to arm wrestle often. You got a lot of choice around here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you see me laughing from time to time, Eric, is because we have some of the funniest trolls in all of arm wrestling. They consistently populate our comments section on the live videos, and the live video comments then disappear after the video gets published on YouTube. So Squinting Joe Drellick is back just for Gabi's entertainment. And of course, we got Wild Pony, who we know is one of my faves. But these guys are asking a lot of questions that are training related. But I wanted to ask you a little bit more. You run the what is your Facebook page called for
the Arm Wrestling Archives?
Arm Wrestling Archives. So people probably don't know that you are probably the authority, the historian in the sport of arm wrestling. What drew you into kind of going down that path that you would be the guy to go to? Was it purely interest or?
Yeah, so I started getting to the history stuff back in 2010. And at that time, I found it frustrating how little information there was online on anything that happened before the internet, basically. We hear about all these people who had won 20 world titles, 30 world titles. And I want to know, what were these events? And, are these actual titles? So I started interviewing, calling people who were in the sport a long time ago. I've had the good fortune to interview people like Dave Devoto, John Woolsey. I spoke to Mo Baker, Bob O'Leary, a lot of, basically, many of the people who have been around since the very, very beginning. Steve Stanaway, people who have been arm wrestling or involved since the 1960s. And I got a lot of information. So what the original plan was to sort of do a summer project right along sort of an article at the end of the summer of 2010. But then I was just getting so much information. I'm like, wait, this is, to me, this was too interesting. And I was just kept digging and digging and digging. And I decided to, rather than write a book or something, whenever I find a topic that interests me, I'll dig into it. And then I'll write an article and publish it on my website. Facebook, it's more, I include a lot of tidbits and factoids, but a lot of the deeper stuff is on the website. But what happened was, so Petaluma was the one I really wanted to know about. Petaluma, I had heard, was the birthplace of arm wrestling or wrist wrestling. And I found it disappointing that I couldn't get any results from before the mid-90s. So I searched online and I found out that at the library in Petaluma, they had the newspapers on microfilm. And I knew that Bill Sobranis, who was the founder, he was a columnist. So I'm like, I'm sure he talked about the tournament in the newspaper.
Yeah.
I wasn't about to be able to get to Petaluma anytime soon, but I contacted the library and I said, do you have people that I can pay to search through the newspapers, search through the microfilms for information? And they hooked me up with somebody. I think I paid them $10 an hour. And in 20 hours of work, I gave her rough dates on what I was looking for. She made all these photocopies and sent everything to me. So then I finally found everything, all the way to the very, very back, to the very first tournament, all the results. And then I published all that. It's funny because a few years later, all of those newspapers have now been digitized and I can just word search them on newspapers.com. So it's a lot easier now. But I was happy to be able to sort of unearth that information. That's the one I'm probably most proud of because that's really the origins, at least in North America, the more recent origin. Everything we can tie to current arm wrestling, really the biggest stimulus was the broadcast on Wide World of Sports of the 1969 event. So that aired January 1970. And that's really what exposed North America to arm wrestling, that it existed. And all of the promoters, almost all the promoters in Canada and the US started because of influence from that TV broadcast. So we really owe, there's 3 events that I consider to be the sort of some of the biggest pivot points in arm wrestling in terms of driving growth. That was the biggest, that was the number one and by far the biggest, I think. Because you ask anyone, you ask Keith Koenig, you ask Bob O'Leary, you ask all of these people, Fred Salvador and Timmons, it all dates back to seeing it on Wide World of Sports. Second event was Over the Top. Over the Top and the way they did the qualifiers, where they flew to, I don't know how many countries, 12 countries around the world, qualifying events, places that never saw arm wrestling in the Western arm wrestling. So that really grew things internationally. And the third one that I think is when arm wrestling got introduced to Russia. So an organization got in touch with the AAA, I guess WAF at the time, back in '89, and they're saying, we want to do a cultural exchange. We want to learn about arm wrestling. So a few guys from the US got together and went on a trip to sort of introduce Russia to arm wrestling. And they had, while they were there, they did, little seminars, and they had 3 tournaments in 3 days just to get the feel for it. And of course, they completely demolished the Russians because they're actual arm wrestlers.
Cobra Rhodes was one of them, I believe, right? Wasn't Cobra one of the ones that went over?
Not the first year, no. Ray Darling, he's the guy who spearheaded it. Ray Darling, Ray Taglione from Florida. There were a few others. But basically, the Russians, some of them were Olympic weightlifters, and they could not understand how they were losing. So they really we got to figure that we want to know how you're doing this. But we can basically thank that contingent for exposing it to Russia, and within 5 years they had caught up and soon surpassed in a lot of respects. So those are 3 things that I think really grew the sport. 3 important events.
So what we've learned here, Gabi, is that Australia is only 2 years away from being competitive on the world stage.
Indeed.
So if you had to pick like a couple of the more interesting or fascinating stories that you've uncovered over the years, what would you kind of lean into? Like the Golden Bear tournaments, I find pretty fascinating.
Yeah, so the Golden Bear started the year after. So
Okay.
the first year they got introduced, and then they organized their first international tournament. And you've probably seen the video of John Brzezinski went to that one, and he pulled the Georgian giant Zauer, however you pronounce his name. Have you seen that video? That's a pretty impressive match.
It's part of pulling John.
Yeah, it is in Pull John. Yeah, and Zauer was just trying to evade. He was doing flop wrist. He was doing anything to avoid from being pinned. And then at some point, John Brzezinski, he waited, and then he had his moment, and he just crushed him. It was an entertaining match to watch.
Now, would that be the event where John won the Brickmaker?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I haven't heard that. A Brickmaker, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there was a story where he won a Brickmaker, and I think it was Russia, and he ended up just leaving it behind and taking a couple of pictures of it. How are you going to bring that home, for one thing? But then what are you going to do with it? I mean,
right.
If we need bricks in North America, we go to the store.
I've heard. I don't have many maybe stories about that event, but I do know that it was such a huge thing. Like they'd fill up like it's called the Moscow Circus. It was held in this big, I don't know, Astrodome, or it was like, but it would be thousands and thousands of people. In the later years, they would lower the arm wrestling table from the ceiling, like on cables. Like it was a big production, you know. It was and John was like a god. The first time he went there and beat everyone, they couldn't believe it. And then they were looking for a name. The first year, it was just called the International Moscow Tournament. Dave Devoto was there, and he had supper with the organizer, Igor Akhmedchin, and he says, "What you need a name for the event?" And then Igor was like, "Well, do you have any ideas?" He goes, "Well, Russia, a golden bear." And because he, I think in California, he was an ex-football player when he was younger, Dave, college level. And I think it was I think Golden Bears may have been the name, or Golden something. And he said that was his suggestion. So they stuck with it, and it became the Gold Bear.
What about there's the one story I liked from there where it was Dave Hicks and them sneaking the heavier Russians down into his class.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Oh, yeah, there was the story, and I verified this with Dave Hicks, that remember the Crushing Russian?
I'm not sure who that would be.
I don't remember his name, but they called him the Crushing Russian, and he was the guy that was killing everyone in the weight class above.
Okay.
And they snuck him down into Dave Hicks' class, and Dave beat him anyway. So.
Yeah. Now, was the grand prize $200, or this was before Travis Bagent started running tournaments?
$200 was a lot of money back then.
Yeah, 200% more than the entry fee.
Yeah.
Another fun story. Didn't happen at a tournament, but this was in probably early to mid '90s. I think it was in Indiana. There was a local arm wrestler. He wasn't an arm wrestler. He was unbeaten in this local town, and eventually somebody says, "Well, I know somebody who can beat him," and then they contacted John Brzezinski, and they invite him for a money match. John Brzezinski at the time, he was under 200 pounds. He wore glasses. He showed up, and the people who were in the crowd who didn't know him, they're like, "This guy has no chance. This is our big local guy." And he finished the match so quickly, like people couldn't even believe it. And then I think they went again, and of course it was the same thing. But I could just imagine being involved in it. If you're John Brzezinski, you must be having a lot of fun going to these things.
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding. So you got an event coming up, Eric?
I have a few events. I now only do one arm wrestling event a year, and it's a big one. It's the Ottawa Open. That's at the end of March. It's so this is the third year in a row that I've run this. I've run it before, a few years before. 6 weight classes for the Open, 3 weight classes for novice, 3 weight classes for grandmasters, and there's also a kids tournament. But the Open division is really where the fun is at. This year, I'm commissioned some sculptures WAL type or Michigan State type sculptures. I don't know if you've seen it. I know he posted it on Facebook recently. I went with a bison. I thought it was a good North American representation of an animal that's strong, endurance, strong-willed. So it's sort of like half bison, half man type creature. So first, second, and third in every open division class, including the women's, will walk away with one of those. It's tall. It's about 12 inches tall. It's a nice award. So that's one of the exciting new things for this year. Another thing I'm trying, just for fun, is that every single win you get in the open division, when you give your name to the scorer's table, you get $5 cash. And that sort of makes sure people report. So I'll never lose track of who's winning. And it's a fun way to, make back some of your entry fee. And the best, obviously the best player is going to make more money, but everyone has a chance. You win one match, you're going to get something, So I thought that was a little added element that should make things fun.
That's interesting. So is the scorekeeper just going to be sitting there with a stack of fives?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right next to me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's the lowest weight class? 150, eh?
150. It's 150, 165, 185. 210, 240, and up.
Fuck me.
So it's to win the Auto Open. It's if you look at the list of names of people who've won it, it's a challenging event. I don't get tons of the highest. They're not all elites, but it's a good caliber tournament.
Yeah.
Who's the reigning super heavyweight champion?
Reigning is Justin Mater.
Okay.
Yeah. The year before was Devin, but he sort of competed on the last minute. His kids sort of convinced him to compete. That was 2 years ago, but I don't think he'll be competing this year. Justin, though, it's very likely that he will be.
We'll fly Ryan in for that one.
Yeah.
You fly me in the Gobby, I'll go do it. But we're paying for the flight.
I collect all the $5 bills for each win.
That's a good deal.
And what I normally do is I roll out a lot of details in the lead up. So I'm going to make a lot more announcements between now and over the next 3 months, just to build excitement. Lots of little things. There will be some financial incentives. There will be some special prizes. There will be a lot of things. But I don't like to play all my cards right out of the gate. I like to build the anticipation a bit.
So that's in March. How is that relative to time-wise to the Kingston Open, which is also, I hear, going to be quite a big event again?
Right. So that's currently scheduled for 4 weeks after. So that's the end of April.
Okay.
Is that the bottom eight?
Pardon?
Eight too? Is that the bottom eight in Kingston? Or
The bottom 8, yeah.
Okay.
So it's tentatively scheduled for April 25th.
Nice.
Okay, interesting.
Different. I mean, that one's going to be definitely the spectacle of the bottom 8 is something, but in terms of a tournament, in terms of I'd say the caliber of the actual tournament, and it's a different, and he's probably going to be running freedom style, I'm guessing. So it will be quite different from the Auto Open.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of that style.
I've tried it once in a contest. There weren't enough people for me to really get a sense of if I liked it or not. So I'm sort of undecided at this point.
I was actually contacted yesterday for a potential opportunity at the bottom 8 too, and that's a $2,000 boxing match with Joe Drellick.
Oh yeah. Well, before you go.
Okay, followed by a 1-round MMA fight with Devin Lorette for $5,000.
Now,
5,000 win or lose, or 5,000 just to show?
Are you kidding? It's guaranteed. $7,000 when I walk in, or else I don't do anything. It's seven G's.
Well, if you're giving $5,000 just to show up for 1 round, I mean.
so you got a box. You got a box Drellick.
The details aren't finalized, but it's Drellick. Now he won't confirm. This won't happen, but it has to happen for me to proceed. So it's Drellick, 5-6 rounds. I don't know how much, but it's full boxing gloves, me and Drellick, and then it's Devin and I in full MMA with a ref one full round.
I thought it was just submission grappling.
Yes, there's no striking.
Right.
Sorry, it's submission grappling, no striking. And I put in the details where if he breaks my arm, he has to pay $50,000. If he breaks a limb, it's $50,000.
Wow.
What if he just puts you in a choke and doesn't let go?
I think I put in the fine print, any bodily harm, it's all in there. And of course they won't take it, right? Because he's under the bitter agenda of causing harm, not producing some type of publicity. So it won't happen because I'm putting in protective contingency plans and insurance policies in there. So it won't be he won't be able to just break arms and concuss me and stuff like that. If it's just grappling, I can't get concussed. I can't get an arm broken. I'm all in for it. And it's in terms of Drellick, I'll knock his teeth out. So it's all good.
Well, Squinty Joe Drellick says he accepts, but that's
that's Tim Turner 2.0. Timothy Turner has three trolling accounts.
So Gabi, when this is over, if this is legit, because Devin has never I don't know if this is legit or somebody stirring the pot, but if Devin really asked for that, a 1-round submission grappling match, is it realistic to think that the beef is squashed after it's all over?
No, here it is. So I was approached with a fight with Drellick, and I said yes. And then someone said, well, I won't tell you who's reaching out to me, but it's someone in Devin's camp. And they said, well, would you fight anyone? Would you fight? And I said, for just the money, right? But when it comes to someone that's over 220 pounds, and I can take strikes to the head like Joe and I are boxing. When he's a heavier guy, I'm not risking shots to the head, so it's going to be grappling. And he said, what about Devin? And I said, $5,000. And he said, great. So he comes back and he says, Joe, we're not sure. Joe hasn't responded, but Devin's in for $5,000. It's confirmed. Sponsor money, not Devin's money. It's sponsor money coming from John Hoffman, a whole bunch of other people that would like to see me get beaten. And then I come in with a counter. Yeah, no problem. But Joe is the first fight. I start with Joe. I end with Devin. And these are the contingencies. These are the details. And then I never heard back from them because now it's not about marketing and publicity. Now it's about wanting to do harm. And if that's the case, he's going to pay through the teeth. And he's not ready to do that. So ultimately it won't happen. And Joe would never take a boxing match with me anyway. So it's not going to happen, but it was like it was issued and accepted before the details were talked about.
Yeah. What do you think of all that, Eric? Do you think there's a chance that any of it's legit?
I'm telling you it's legit. It will not happen, but I'm telling you, Devin green lighted it. $5,000, not his money, sponsors money, all covered until I came back with Joe first, details, and if you break my arm or strike me or concuss me, you're paying, and it's all going to be, an official ref, and it's all going to be. And then I never heard back from him because now it's not a circus where I get pummeled, beaten, and have limbs broken.
Well, interesting. And the chat is blowing up. Evan Burgoyne says this is a load of shit, but I want to know what he means. So.
And he's the one that he's the one that contacted me. He's the one. You want to fight Joe? Absolutely. Would you fight me? I'm like, no, you're 240, 50 pounds. I'll wrestle you, but I'm not boxing. And he says, well, what about Devin? And I said, absolutely. 5,000 for Devin. He came back 5 minutes later, says, we got the sponsor money. It's done. Wes Bornson was another one that contacted me, and he says, Devin's in. Joe's not in. We haven't got confirmation from Joe. Devin's in. 5,000. You good? I said, I'm good. However, and then I sent Evan a big, with if it's just grappling and we're just gonna, no problem. If I can tap out and he releases, now of course I can't just walk in and tap out. We have to do a full round, and I will. But he cannot. He could submit me, but he can't break an arm, and he can't lay down strikes. And I never heard back from him. That's a legit truth. They could deny it, but I don't. If you know me, I don't fucking lie.
All right. Fair. What else have you got for our guest, Mr. Gabi?
Well, really, my next event's going to be his event. I hit the first two and I missed the last one. His events are real special. And actually, I was talking to him 2 years ago about his event. And so many promoters are looking to get an angle and make money. And of course, I've stipulated nothing wrong with making a little bit of profit for a promoter. They put in a lot of work. And Eric told me I'm not looking to make a profit. For me, I compare it to throwing a big party with all my friends. I'm going to get the alcohol, I'm going to get the food, and I'm going to lose a little bit of money, but it's going to be a hell of a bash with my friends and something they're not going to forget. And that there is a promoter that deserves a shitload of participation. And I've always noticed he gets good participation from Quebecers, but he never really gets good. I find that he doesn't get a good support from Belleville. Well, he gets good support here and there, but I never thought he got the support that he fully deserves for those events, especially what he's giving out. But this year, I compared his event like it can be a Canadian Michigan State. Michigan State's an awesome tournament because those fucking gorillas to top 3. And the fact that you give it to top 3, if you only gave it to first, you have a lot of people saying, well, I can't beat this guy. No point. But anyone that's so, a decent tier 2 up knows that depending on who shows up, they can finish in the top 3, which makes it exciting. And he's giving top 3 for these 12-inch long or big trophies. And he's giving away the $5 and like he offers amateurs and there's women's and he's offering the trophies to women, top 3 in women's. It's a great venue. The refs are usually very good. He runs 2 tables. It's usually done at a decent time. Bonus awards. And like he says, as he gets closer, he adds on different awards, most wins, farthest travel, like all these cool things. And the incentives just are endless, really. And I just hope that he gets like fucking 300 entries. I just hope it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, we're averaging over 200, and I think it will be bigger this year, including kids, obviously. One of the things that I can tell you will be coming back is the one I offered last year, which is if anyone wins an open division auto open title, wins a title with the same arm at the provincials, whichever provincials is your provincials, and the same arm in the open division at nationals, you get your share of $500. And last year, one person succeeded. That was Xavier Marchildon out of Quebec. He won the Auto Open, he won provincials, he won nationals, and he got $500. So
nice. Yeah, it's
another added incentive.
Yeah, and what's awesome about that is it carries over to different events. So you're supporting basically one event, trying to support all Canadian, provincial and Canadian. So it's kind of a cool thing. I hope it just explodes. Yeah. But there's a lot of unpredictability when it comes to running events. But man, I for one will be there. It's good stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun when we get some of the guys from upstate New York too, and
yeah, I know Ken McKinney was there. Ken McKinney was there last year. Was Chris Michaels there? No, I don't know if Chris or Benji showed up. I know Ken McKinney was there with a couple of New York State guys. And he asked me, is it worth it? I'm like, yeah, man. I mean, he was getting down to the 165s, and I think he lost to William Walsh left, and right he lost to Charbonneau, who's
okay.
Charbonneau.
Yeah, no, if an American wants, if an American a level 2, level 3 guy wants to see where they're at against Canadian competition, that's a good contest to go to because you're going to get a lot. You won't get obviously you won't get all the top Canadians, but you get a lot of them. And if you place top 3 in that tournament, it's not easy.
No.
So you're telling me, just for clarification for those watching, if I were to make the trip out to your event, and I win either arm, I come back and I win either arm at the provincials, either arm.
It has to be same arm. Same arm.
Or okay, same arm.
Yeah.
At the provincials, at my provincials, and at my nationals.
In the open division.
In the open division,
yeah.
There's an opportunity for some cash there, like after the fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I paid Xavier at nationals this year.
Question: if Ryan comes to the Auto Open, wins the Auto Open right and left, provincials right and left, nationals right and left, open, does he get 1,000?
No, it's 500 is the total pot. So it could be split. I have to protect myself.
No. But Ryan, to be fair, I mean, your left guarantees gets all 3. I mean, that pays maybe 70% of your flight. That's not a bad deal, dude.
And you get a couple of bisons, and
Yeah.
Well, the problem is, what if 5 guys do that? Then we each only get $100, right?
Yeah, like I said though, after the Auto Open last year, I think there's like 12 people who were eligible.
Yeah.
After provincials, it was already down to only 3 or 4, and at nationals, only 1 person was successful. So you won't be splitting it. It's possible you might have to split it, but you won't be splitting it 5 ways. It's just very unlikely.
Right. Well, there is an opportunity there, and I might, we'll see what's going on. There is a WAL season coming up, but who knows who's going to get the opportunity in that. I'm not going to hold my breath too long on that one, but there's a lot of people out there that are being talked about. the interesting twist on it all is that some of the guys that were being talked about for the next WAL season seem to be tied up in the top 8 event for next year. Krasimir being one of those guys.
Right.
Yeah. It is what it is. So are you still doing rankings, Eric?
I'm not doing rankings. That was one of the things I had to I just had too much on my plate. I did that for 5 or 6 years between about 2006, 2010 or 11. I did that for Canada and Ontario, Canada, North America. Right now, I don't think anyone's doing Canadian rankings regularly, are they?
I did see an Ontario one pop up.
Ontario, yeah. So that just started up this week.
Who's doing it? Because it looks good. It looks
It's pretty good, yeah. I don't know exactly who's involved. I know Tyler Bolzan is involved. I don't know exactly who else, but so far from what I've seen, it's a decent start. So they're doing Ontario rankings.
Yeah, the format looks amazing. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very happy that somebody's taking that on, because it is. I don't know. I find it interesting, motivating. You know, it's especially the newer guys, the newer arm wrestlers. They want to climb. They want to know who they have to beat to climb. So I think it's good.
It is good for sure. It's good. Yeah. I mean, you did it for 4 or 5 years. I took it over. I did it for 3, and then I came back and I made my own, merging the both and doing a top 20. Like you and I have, done a lot of years of rankings for sure.
Yeah. And it's a lot of fun, but it is a lot of work. I mean, especially if you want to do a good job, right? It's a lot of work.
I mean, and back when you were doing it, we had the OAA board and the CAWF board, and you got, well, even when I took it over for you, we got feedback pretty quickly on event results. Since those 2 boards don't exist, and we go on Facebook, man, you have to contact people, try to look for videos, decipher pages, and go through walls and try to find out, okay, was this a legit win? Did he pull 2? I mean, there was so much work for me to do. It was like, I'd say, okay, today I'll dedicate, and it was like 6 hours trying to filter through and trying to decipher, and it's like, holy shit, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a pet peeve of mine when a promoter, you could throw on a great event. Sometimes this happens for big events, and the results don't get posted. Sometimes not for a week, sometimes not ever. And I find that completely unacceptable. I mean, I think it's a disservice to anyone who went to compete in the event, especially if you placed and you did well, you're proud of yourself, and then the results aren't anywhere. I don't know. I think and it makes the rankings, impossible.
I had a couple people when I was doing it on Facebook here recently. I had a couple people that would send me the brackets, which I fucking loved. I mean, you get the full bracket. You're like, nice. I have the wins and I have the chronology. I can when each match happened and when so that was fun. But that was a rarity that didn't come up very often.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we take the rankings. Just a question about, you guys both used to do them. How would you put? Would you even bother putting professionals into the ranking system?
You have to. Anyone that's active, I think that's the only way it's accurate. And also, I had a discussion with Eric years ago, where what happens if someone decides he doesn't like it and he wants to be, oh, please take my name off the rankings. Yeah. Well, my response was, no, you're active. As long as you're active within a calendar year, you're going to be put in my rankings to make it accurate and legit. And that goes for the tier 5s. As long as you're active, you're in there. If you fit in it.
Yeah. Well, the rankings that you guys saw go up for Ontario, and I don't mean to pick on Devin, but is he included in that ranking?
He is.
Yeah.
How does what is the path for a guy to take his ranking away?
I mean, I guess you can challenge. I mean, it's not impossible to set up sort of a challenge match, or if you were to go to him, I think he'd probably be open to pulling I would assume. I don't know for sure, but you're right. He's going to be hard to catch, but he definitely deserves to be ranked number 1, I think.
Well, I agree, but logistically, it's a problem, especially with the way the WAL has kind of gone a little bit with discouraging some of their guys from competing outside the organization. I'm not saying they're telling them they can't, but they certainly have discouraged it based on some of the events over the last few months where some of their top guys went and took some defeats.
Right. Anyway, I don't think it's a concern. Anyone in Ontario thinks it could be Devin. I don't think right now there's many people who are in that group. Justin is ranked. I don't know where Justin is ranked. He's ranked top 3 or top 4 in Ontario. they train
Well,
together well.
Yeah, I think Justin and Evan when I looked at it briefly the other day are in the top 3, and neither one would touch them with a ready go.
Yeah, so I don't think it's really a big issue right now.
No, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. We're scrolling through. Gabi, what else you got while I scroll through these comments?
What else do we have? I know you said recently you were more into grip, but did you follow the wall season? Have you been following Zloty? Do you still follow results and stuff like that?
Yeah, I watched all the WL events. I watched a lot of the top 8 events as well. I'd say internationally, I'm only sort of aware of the very top guys. North America, I still have a pretty good. I think know most of the, level 3s and up. So I do follow the results of the big tournaments, but I'm not I've been approached to be involved in the world rankings on Export News, but I'm not following it enough to be able to if I want to do something, I want to do it well. And I just am not currently immersed enough to be able to contribute to that.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're talking about watching both WAL and PAL.
Yeah.
What style do you prefer?
Good question.
I mean, as a spectator, I prefer watching WAL. I really like those events to watch. Are very, very entertaining. And yes, there might be calls that are missed or whatever, but from a spectator's point of view, I prefer WAL. If I was pulling, only because I don't really cheat very much, and I don't get that many fouls. I'd probably prefer the strict version if I was competing. But yeah, WL is definitely onto something in terms of the look of professional armwrestling. I quite like it.
Not this year, not this past year, but or the year before. But have you been competing in your own Ottawa Open events? I know you did 2 years ago.
I did 2 years ago. I didn't do this year. I was training for the Arnold's. I had recently attended the Arnold's for the grip contest, and I didn't feel like cutting 8 pounds, and I didn't feel strong enough to compete. I wasn't confident that day on the arm wrestling table, so I didn't compete that day.
So 2 years ago, you competed. What class did you compete in? 2 years.
I did the 210.
Okay, now in the 210, can you recall your hardest, toughest match, the longest match?
At that tournament?
Yeah, 2 years ago, 210. Dig deep. Who was your hardest match? It was about a 2-minute match with fouls.
Oh, that was a right hand match with you. Yeah.
Boom. Gabi out of nowhere, 210.
That was a right hand match, and until I figured out, you know what? Why don't I just pull back? And then that was it.
Yeah. I dug in though.
Yeah.
I dug in.
But that was a good match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Wild Pony's been asking this question a couple of times. So the question is, Chris Gabi said that John Brzenk beats Levan in 1 year with 1 year of preparation time. However, he told me that he can't win the top 8 95 kilograms.
Gabi never said that. Gabi's not that stupid.
That seems hypocritical. Please tell him to elaborate.
I don't know if John in his prime, if you pluck John into, I believe Eric and I both agree that John's best year was 2006. Weighed about 238. I believe. Anyway, was sponsored by Viotech. I believe that version of John versus current Levan loses to Levan. It might be a good match, but so now John, post-retirement coming back, I don't even think he can win the 95 kilo, let alone the baddest motherfucker on earth. I never stated that. That's a ridiculous comment. I don't, like I said, and John, I think he has his hand full in the 95. The guy's damn near 60 years old. Yeah, it's still a strength sport, right? His bag of tools can only take him so far. He'll do good and he'll draw tons of attention, but he's not beating the Devons, the Marcios. He's not beating the top 230 guys, let alone the top heavyweights on earth. Just doesn't work that way in the sport.
So based on the names that you see who are currently in the top 8 for the 95 kg, how high do you think John can finish based on who's in there right now?
Well, who's in it? Let's run through it.
Angarbayev.
Yeah.
Babayev. John. Who are the other ones?
Possibly Joe
Weasel Bowen in
Fox.
there? Bowen's in there, isn't he?
Possibly Joe Fox, yeah. No, Bowen's not in it.
No, he's not?
No.
So, I mean, he beats.
Do you see him beating either of those two?
No, he beats Joe Fox. He doesn't beat either of those two. He doesn't beat Rustam, and he doesn't beat Angarbayev. He doesn't beat those two. He can make it a match versus Angarbayev because he'll pull high, but I think Rustam will drive him sideways. I mean, it'll be
even though Tim, I know Tim's a lot heavier, but Tim's close to the same age as John, and Tim just beat Rustam. I know it's not
different
the same
styles, right?
Yeah.
Tim's very, very hard to finish if you're a super elite super heavyweight, only because he has an incredible. He has a better counter hook than John, which means it's almost like John has a strong high hook. He's got a good defensive hook, but he doesn't really pull with a defensive open counter hook. And Tim has he has a short hand, but he's a very, very, very thick hand, and he gets low in that counter hook. You know what a counter hook is, and it's very hard for, let alone a heavyweight, but a middleweight with a short hand trying to buckle his pronation and get a full hook in. That's why Rustam historically has trouble with Tim, and not so with John. What Tim does as well as anyone on earth. And that move will not necessarily fade with years, as he's a defensive, open, stylistic puller with that thick hand. Now if John develops a King's move or that type of move, John can, John might be able to go further, longer. But
I think you're crazy, Gabi. I think by the time that tournament rolls around, John has a shot at winning it. And in round one, he's not against any of those guys. He's against one of the challengers because he's on the champions side of the draw.
Well, obviously, if he gets to one of those guys, then they're fatigued. But apples to apples, he's not winning that. He's come on, man. We'll bet some money, and I'll take you for more money, like I did in the Wall season. It's all good. Not happening. I love the fact that he's coming out of retirement. But it's like Tiger Woods coming out of retirement. He got slapped, and it's fucking golf. You don't even need to be strong.
He just won the Masters.
Huh?
Tiger just won the Masters.
I'm not sure he did. couple top guys weren't there, and he was getting slapped.
He won the hardest tournament in the world.
And then he couldn't qualify. He couldn't even make the
Complete.
cut. He couldn't even make the cut in 10 events prior. Like, it just happened. Everything perfectly rolled up for him.
John's winning that event. Eric, what do you think?
Well, he's got several months to prepare, right?
Yeah.
And if he's going to take this seriously, I think he can get close to, I don't know exactly how far he can get, and I'm not confident he will beat those two, but I definitely think he'll be top three.
You fuckers are wacky. You're wacky.
And also, you also have the event, like John is a very smart arm wrestler. He will have a game plan for every single guy that he faces, and several months to prepare for each guy, having those matches announced at least a couple of months out.
He's 60 years old, man. He's rickety.
55.
They're saying that shit about him for years. He's getting too old. And
55.
Then he kills everybody. Kills everybody in Wild. Beats Michael Todd at the UAL. They thought he was washed up then.
Oh, man. Well, I'll make some money. Eric's too smart. Eric won't bet me, but you'll bet me, and I'll take some of that money you're going to make in Ottawa.
Yeah, I'll bet you.
This is I don't know if you guys remember. This was probably about a dozen years ago. They were John and Rustam were going to have a match, sort of at a catch weight of about 100. I think it was 189, and it was sort of to determine who is the best pound for pound. Do you guys remember that at all? It didn't happen.
No.
I know that John was losing weight, and then sort of like 2 weeks before, something came out that Rustam hurt himself. There were different stories coming out, and then they were contradictory stories. So I don't actually know what happened. Yeah. All I remember is that the match didn't happen, but people were excited for that.
And you remember, and it was all John coming down. It wasn't much of Rustam going up.
No.
It was John losing weight, and then it got canceled. But in this scenario, I think that it's the other way around. John's going to stay about where he is at and refine.
Yep.
And Rustam's going to have to lose weight. And I think that's going to be a problem with the way his body composition is right now, because he's going to have to sacrifice lean mass to get down to that weight.
John is, you mean?
No.
Oh, man. And in that scenario, if they would have met, Roussin slaps him. I mean, fuck.
Well, they did face, they did pull a couple times after that at Zloty, a heavier John, and John was able to stop him and bring him back. But who knows? You think for sure he would have lost if he weighed 190?
Roussin had a big, strong, juiced up 189 versus a John coming down 20 pounds under his comfort level, aging, running, can't go inside. Roussin all day. Roussin fucking smoked Todd, man. Todd would just play with John right now. Oh, John might get his hand sometimes, but Todd will get in the strap and Todd will do his thing. Man, he's a goat. Don't get me wrong, John is, but man, you guys are fluffing him a bit too much in my opinion.
Who do you think is going to win between Angarbayev and Babayev?
Well, if everyone comes in their top game, that's Rustam's to lose. But because Angarbayev is a little bit more multidimensional and has more length, if Roussin gets in a hard hook match with I don't know who the other guys are, but if he gets in he's done. Like Angarbayev is a little bit more versatile, can win more matches via the hand. Where in that class, Rustam's pretty much forced to win via the hook every match. This isn't 85, right? This is 95. So you got some big boys that he's not going to be able to roll or high hook. So he's going to go in with the full torque of the engine, and you don't have 8-9 minutes of that, right? You don't have that, just like you have 8-9 minutes of finger climbing in. So I don't think it benefits him. Now, if they had a super match, that's different. But you never know. Like the draw plays a huge factor. Who knows?
But we agree at the end of it all, John's probably going to be on top.
Yeah, and Joe Fox, if he goes, will get fucking rinsed. Like, how does he get in there? I mean, I'd take a super match with that guy. Canadian
Joe is.
Boy, don't get me wrong.
Listen, Joe went there and placed ahead of all the guys that we were talking about 2 weeks ago, getting into that 95 kilo.
So he plays better at Zloty than he did at Canadian Nationals.
No, I don't think that's accurate.
No, it's not accurate. I thought.
No, I don't think it is.
Okay. Isn't he a 176 guy? In Montreal a couple of years ago, he pulled nationals at 176 and had a war with Charbonneau. If it's the same Joe Fox I'm thinking of, and now he's pulling 95 kg, best in the world. If so, give me some of what he's on. Damn.
Well, he also pulled the worlds, and I have it on pretty good authority that Herman Stevens was one of the guys that they pulled from the lineup to actually drug test over there.
Yeah, at
IFA the week before.
Yeah, he told me that personally. He told me that. Yeah. So interesting. Oh, yeah.
My only question was to Rick when I asked about that is, did IFA actually drug test?
They did. Yeah, they were pretty stringent from what I heard. I mean, Herman said they went with him in the washroom and watched it go right in the bottle. No fucking around. There you have it.
Yeah, in 2005 in Japan, which that was the first year, we got to turn our back to the doctor. Like, we didn't have to actually stand there facing him. But, yeah, I probably could have poured Diet Pepsi in there and they wouldn't have cared.
Did you get tested, really?
I did get tested in 2005, yeah.
So you got tested, but Smeagol didn't, eh? Smeagol, or that big, huge, massive German didn't?
Smeagol did not. No, it was me and, if I'm not mistaken, Mark McPhail has been tested as well at the Worlds.
Good old random drug testing.
Yeah. And Cody Merritt got plucked right from the lineup in weigh-ins at WAF, which is a bit of a new thing. All right, Gabi and Eric, we are at the 65-minute mark, you guys. So, anything else pressing that we want to visit before we close her up for the day?
Oh, man, I just wanted to plug the hell out of his event. And my goal this year was to get one Ottawa high hooker on the show. We've done that. Our job is 7 said no, so I figured lucky 8 might be the one. And
well,
so yeah, thanks for coming on. Anything you want to share? Anything you want to chat about before we get off, Eric?
No, I like the sort of the possibility that Ryan might come to the Ottawa Open, and his trip would be a flight from Winnipeg, you can get that for under $500.
Oh yeah.
Winnipeg is the most expensive city in Canada to fly out of, in case you were wondering. But nothing is impossible. Yes, Ronan, I passed the drug test. Jesus. But let's continue the dialogue about that, Eric, and maybe I will actually come out to that event. It's definitely a possibility.
It wasn't the Michael Classic on your bucket list, and you never made it out, right?
I made it out to the very last.
Oh, did you? Oh, the one I missed.
It was UAL.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
And what people don't know about that one, Robert Drink actually bought me a flight.
Oh, wow.
To come out to that event. And big props to Robert Drink. He's not probably watching this show. He's not really involved in arm wrestling anymore. I did see him on an episode of Flip or Flop a couple of weeks ago on HGTV, which I thought was pretty cool. But he's doing insurance and flipping real estate now, apparently in California. But for a little while, he was the guy.
Yeah.
And I did finally make it out to the Mike Gould Classic, pulled there, and then it never happened again.
Well, this is sort of taking. I'm trying to make it fill the gap, fill the void. It's a high. I'm not going to reach that level anytime soon, but that's it. I would say it's the biggest annual tournament in Ontario right now.
That's awesome, and nothing is impossible, man. I might actually be out there, so we'll see what's up.
And this just in, HGTV isn't just for women. Go figure. I learn something every day.
You would learn a lot if you just watched HGTV.
Yeah, I mean, anyone can learn gardening, right? I mean, roses, petals. Maybe I'll pick it up. Who knows?
And now we're getting sued.
Come on, man. I've said way worse.
That's true.
And wait till we're gonna hit 1,000 subs. I can see it now. We're on a strong pace ever since we joined YouTube Live. And when that Travis Bajan episode comes out, boy,
we're getting sued.
Yeah, there'll be some lawsuits in action.
It's interesting. The other thing I want to mention is next week's guest is Anders, the president of the IFA. And that will be the last episode of 2019. So this is going to be a very interesting one. They all are, but I mean, we'll get the inside scoop on the birth of that organization and kind of how it all came together.
Yeah.
And looking a little bit past that, I think actually RVJ wanted to come on today, and I said, I was trolling him the other day, and he said, well, I want to get him on the show, and we can bang it out. And I said, well, we got Eric Wednesday, but maybe early in the new year, and so he seems keen on that. So that would be a big episode. That could be fun. He's flip-flopping all over the place, but maybe we can get him to confirm and hit something. Yeah. Who knows?
And Eric, we appreciate you coming on, man. And you are the go-to as far as the history of arm wrestling goes. And I appreciated being a small part of that along the way. And hopefully we'll see you at your event, the Ottawa Open, coming up at the end of March.
March 28th, yeah.
March 28th, right on.
Yeah. And save those $5 bills, Eric, because I'm coming for a shitload of them.
All right.
He's going to keep reporting to the scorekeeper's table whether he wins or not.
And then duck out before the event's over before they catch on.
All right, guys. Happy holidays.
Same to you.
Merry Christmas. Take care, guys.
Okay, talk to you guys soon.